and the Daily Sceptic is back with us. You also have your issues that you want dealt with, Toby. How do you think these first hours of the Liz Truss premiership are going so far?
Well, the good news, Mark, is it's almost as if the Conservative Party is now trolling the Labour Party. This is the third female Prime Minister the Conservative Party has had, and Labour still haven't had one. They haven't had a female leader, let alone a female Prime Minister, and yet they're supposedly the party of gender equality. One of the things we've learnt in the last couple of hours is that all 5 great offices of state now aren't occupied, aren't held by a white male. You know, the Conservative Party, according to Labour, is male, pale and stale, and yet there isn't a single male, pale and stale male in any of the 5 great offices of state. You know, how are the Labour Party going to cope with that? So that's the good news. I think it's going to throw Labour through a loop, and people are going to start asking questions. They've been talking the talk about equality for some time now, but they haven't yet begun to walk the walk. I was slightly surprised to hear Liz Truss say during her acceptance speech yesterday that she had run as a Conservative and intended to govern as a Conservative. I mean, I couldn't help but think, well, she's been in the government since 2012. That's 10 years now. She's been in the cabinet since 2014. She's held, I think, 5 cabinet positions. How come she hasn't governed as a Conservative until now? But anyway, better late than never, Mark. But I think one of her first policy announcements, if the briefing is to be believed, is a price cap on energy bills, which doesn't sound like she's remaining particularly faithful to her supposedly free market fundamentalism. But admittedly, she has been dealt a pretty poor hand when it comes to rising energy bills, and I think she probably does need to do something, and this may be the least worst option. I'm concerned to see who the Culture Secretary is. Apparently it was offered to Nadine Dorries, which is a bad sign because the online safety bill is, of course, Nadine Dorries's baby. She was given the opportunity to remain as Culture Secretary, but apparently turned it down. That may be good news. She may have turned it down because Liz Truss said, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to amend this bill and take out the legal but harmful stuff. So that may be why she didn't take it. But one of the rumours is that it may be offered to Penny Mordaunt, which I think would be even worse than Nadine Dorries, Penny being the wokest person in the Labour, the Conservative leadership contest. So I'll be interested to see who the Education Secretary is. At the moment, we don't have an Education Secretary because that was James Cleverly. He's now the Foreign Secretary. But if Kemi Badenoch is either the Education Secretary or the Culture Secretary, I'll go to bed happy tonight.
Well, anyone can do analysis of appointments like the Secretary of State for Education or the Secretary of State for Trade. We have just heard, we have breaking news. Hold the front page. Nadhim Zahawi has been appointed. Just calm down, everyone. Nadhim Zahawi has been appointed Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Over to you, Toby.
Well, that sounds like a demotion for poor Nadhim. Nadhim was maybe the shortest ever serving Chancellor of the Exchequer. When Rishi resigned, triggering the defenestration of Boris Johnson, Nadhim stepped into the breach and became Chancellor of the Exchequer. So I fear, and Samantha, I think will probably confirm this, that going from Chancellor of the Exchequer, the second most powerful man in the country, to the Duchy of Lancaster is a demotion.
Yeah, he's still a Chancellor, though. It could have been worse. He could have been made, Chancellor of Rockall or the South Sandwich Islands. So he can still go around calling up restaurants and booking a great table by claiming to be Chancellor, can't he?
He can, and in fairness, that does mean he's in charge of the Cabinet Office, which is in its own way quite a powerful position in the government. So, better than being demoted altogether and kicked out of the government. So, and I don't think he could have expected to hold on to the chancellorship. He was a very late Liz backer, so I think he'll probably be quite pleased.
What do you make of all these big beasts, as the papers say? And to be honest, the big beasts at least to my mind, seem to have shrunk a lot over the last few decades in the Tory party. But what do you make of all these heavyweights, starting with Dominic Raab, who are now on the back benches? Is there going to be a kind of anti-Liz faction there from the go?
I would have thought that they will grant her a kind of grace period in which they'll refrain from attacking her immediately. But they'll be waiting, I think, for her to slip up. And I would have thought that Dominic Raab, in particular, will be eyeing up his own chances of running as her successor if, God forbid, she should lose the next general election. So I would have thought that there are a few of the people who've lost their jobs in the last 48 hours who are eyeing up a challenge in due course.
We've had 12 years of Conservative-led government in the UK, and the country has never been less conservative, and all the kind of leftward outreach would be great if it had worked. But we're in the situation now, Toby, where people are going to be looking at almost unbelievable energy bills, looking at paying 20% of their post-tax income on just keeping the lights on, and you can't but feel that all this left-wing outreach has been a disaster for a right-of-centre party, but they're in a difficult position in now claiming to be the party of small government and, as Liz Truss said, governing as a Conservative. Where does it go from here?
Yes, well, all the mood music coming from Liz and her campaign team over the last however many weeks it's been. What has it been? Several years that we've had to endure this leadership contest. All the mood music has suggested that she is a proper conservative. She is a radical conservative. She's a true believer in markets. She's going to. She wants to shrink the size of the state. She wants to cut taxes, and so on and so forth. But lots of conservative leaders say that kind of thing, only to then tack to the centre when they enter 10 Downing Street. I mean, I had, God help me, Mark, I had quite a lot of hope invested in Boris Johnson when he became the leader in 2019. And when he won, an 80-seat majority, I thought, at last, we're going to have a proper Conservative Prime Minister who's going to do some properly Conservative things, only for him to embrace the net zero agenda and go all in on COP26 and try and make that his legacy rather than Brexit. And as you say, I think one poll has the Conservatives 15 points behind Labour. So all that outreach to the left, all that tacking to the centre, all that coalition building with Guardian leaders appears to have done them no good whatsoever. So you sort of hope that Liz Truss will remain faithful to her election promises and actually govern as a proper, true blue, fundamental Conservative. But I fear, Mark, that she may end up being Boris Johnson in a dress.